welcome to the Writer's Review. I'm Brian Dusky.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And today we are going to review Season 3 of Stranger Things, which was just recently released. So stay tuned for that. So, we made it through it. We binged the series. I don't know about you, but I watched like the first 2 episodes shortly after it came out. It was about 2 in the morning. And then I had watched the rest of them the following day. General thoughts. I'm going to start. I thought that it was a decent season, but nothing too special. It was off to a very slow start. I was about halfway through, and I was like, "Yeah, this took a step back. I'm not feeling this."
Okay.
I was intrigued because I liked the characters enough, and to where I want to see where it went, but I wasn't feeling it. And the biggest reason was that I felt like the show lost its sense of urgency. I felt like the problems they dealt with in the first 2 seasons were a lot more urgent. Now the problems in this season became urgent eventually, but from the get-go they were not urgent. They were almost They were almost like, we know something bad's going to happen, and we're going to try and stop it before it happens. As opposed to the previous seasons, it was already happening. And so they were struggling episode by episode to make it work out. So it was almost like the whole season and previous seasons were like them working towards something. Okay. And this season was more like they kind of established that halfway. Now, that being said, there were some good parts of the season I did feel. I thought there was some unique stuff that they did with the character structure and with the narrative structure. We'll get more into that when we talk about the specifics. But all in all, I thought it was a good season. Not great. Okay. I thought Netflix has an issue of their shows falling off. I thought that if this is the fall off, I'm okay with that. Like if this is the fall off we have to deal with, this is fine. Like shows like Orange is the New Black, like House of Cards, like shows like that, when they fell off, I thought it was a big fall off. It was a cliff, not like a slow slope. But those are my thoughts.
I've got some issues with Netflix in general, because any show that I get invested in, they just cancel with no warning. Every time. But anyway, Stranger Things is a big deal for me. I really enjoy the show. We actually made it a full event. We stayed up until they released the initial episode. I was going to watch it. It ended up being a 3-day, kind of spread out.
Yeah.
Right on 4th of July, not the best day to release your, binge watch show, but it's fine. Got through it all. Got through a lot of Thai food and a lot of episodes. I agree. It's decent. It's a decent season. I have really no huge formal complaint about it, but definitely not the best season they produced so far. I do think there were some good performances in this season that are absolutely commendable. Not from who I wanted them to be from. There was a character, it's Noah Schnapp's character, Will, last season that I think was wonderful. I think as a young actor, he really stepped up last season, season 2. We didn't get a lot of that from him this season. However, I think some people came forward and kind of took his place a little bit for who really sold this season. Yeah. But I will agree, there wasn't a lot of urgency. It felt like a very different season as compared to what we were expecting. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they are trying to broaden their horizons a little bit, tackle a little bit more. But it definitely wasn't the best of the 3, that's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like they lost the focus a little bit.
Yeah.
So generally the issue is, and this show did pretty well with it to where they balanced the characters well, usually, but you still had the notion of who's this season about. So with the first season, it was mostly about Mike and Eleven. That was our core focus. So the second season, they were still a pretty core focus, but it was more about Will that season because he was the one who was struggling.
Okay.
This season, there were moments where it felt like certain characters, because there was moments where it felt like it was about Eleven because she was becoming more independent,
okay.
Which was a frustration with me because I felt like early on in the season, she wasn't her character anymore. Like she didn't seem like 11 to me. Like I felt like I was watching Millie Bobby Brown in another movie, and so I was like, that's weird. She's a little too comfortable. And then halfway through the season, she kind of reverted back, and she was using the shortened sentences and the confusion that 11 usually has. And so I was just like, I get what you're doing. You're trying to say that she is accustomed to the world a little bit more, but I felt like it wasn't like a slow morphing into that. It was just a quick sudden. All of a sudden, she's normal and just like all the other kids.
So what we're dealing with Stranger Things is we have a cast essentially of a lot of child actors, young actors, inexperienced actors. And I accepted, just through the trailers of this, that I was going to be dealing with some teenage melodrama in this season. I did not expect that to be the overarching theme of the first half of the season.
Yeah.
Where we're not developing really anything moving forward. We're just talking about these weird love interests that are forming and dissolving, and it's teenage melodrama.
Yeah.
And that's not Stranger Things to me.
No.
But if we can move on to a little bit like the meat of the conversation here and start talking about a little bit what actually happened in the third season.
Yeah. So okay, now we're gonna go into like anybody who hasn't watched the season, spoiler effects. Let's talk about what worked.
What worked? Billy, Dacre Montgomery, and I had to look up how to say Dacre. I'm not ashamed, so if I'm butchering it, but Dacre Montgomery, I think really stepped up at performance level. Dacre this season was my Noah Schnapp from last season. He was the Will, where his character was definitely going through some stuff, and we get some brilliant moments of performance from the actor.
Yeah.
But very few and far between because it wasn't the centralized theme of the season, though it intended. It was supposed to be.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be the big cusp here, and we just kind of flirted with it now and then. I can tell you 100% what's going to happen next season, and it's going to be Eleven will die. That'll be the end of Stranger Things.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Oh, well, no, it's lined out perfectly. If you get close to Joyce, you will die. Season 1, she loses Will. Season 2, was his name Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah, she loses Bob. Season 3, she gets close to Hopper. The woman's the plague. If you get too close to her, you're going to die.
That's
and now
really interesting.
She's adopting 11. Apparently, that is going to be our theme here. She's going to get close to 11, and we're going to lose 11.
See, I actually thought 11 was going to die this season.
Yeah?
I actually did. But yeah, I'm not going to derail that.
No, it's Star Wars, man. Yoda died. She has to get her powers back now. She has to actualize them.
Yeah.
I don't think Stranger Things will go past 4 seasons. But as Netflix does, this could be the last season. They may just abruptly cancel it because they can.
Well, and most of those shows that get canceled early, it's usually after the third, because once you do more than 3 seasons, you have to pay royalties.
Yeah.
Now they're going past that, and it's their number 1 show. They haven't often done that with their top show. Their top shows have usually ran a long time. In my opinion, too long.
Any show I get invested in into Netflix will cancel immediately after 2 or 3 seasons on a cliffhanger with no explanation.
Yeah, because this is like outside of their first wave, because their first wave was House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, and those shows ran a long time. And now this is their biggest show outside of that. And so I think they'll probably run a while. I would agree with you. I think maybe next season should be. I actually would not be opposed for them to do 1 more season and then doing a movie. I think that would be interesting.
Okay.
I think they would make a crap ton of money off of that, because I think that would be huge at the box office. But I think that would be interesting. Anything else that you thought that worked during the season?
I also think the ending for Hopper, David Harbour, I think it was a fine ending.
Yeah.
We had a major character shift. We saw growth and change from the gruff Hopper that we used to have. And it was in that moment of humanity and weakness that he died.
Yeah.
Now, there's a little bit of an argument. Did Hopper actually die?
Yeah.
Yes, he did. That is not the American in the jail cell. I have my own opinion on that one there. But no, Hopper went, and he went in true fashion, and I think that really saved a lot of this season.
Yeah.
That season needed something to cap it off.
I agree.
Because we've had these great, huge climactic moments from Stranger Things season 1, season 2 that we've always ended on.
Yeah.
The shadow creature, whatever you want to call it in this, felt a little weak. The plot points with Billy felt a little weak.
Yeah.
Everything felt weak until the moment where we lost Hopper, and then it felt real again. So it was necessary, and it was well executed, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I'm not buying into the whole Hopper might be alive.
So okay, so I'll go to my what worked, but first I will comment on your Hopper being alive, whatever thing. I was thinking about that for the few days. Because I would say outside of 11, he's the most popular character, and so it would be a shame because he's been one of my favorite characters on the show. But the reason I keep it open, and this might just be the creators keeping it open, because it creates discussion.
It does.
But they didn't like, it wasn't shot in a way to where like they showed him, being obliterated. It was kind of like it happened, and then he's not there all of a sudden. So it's like, yeah, I'm 99.99% sure, yeah, he's dead. There's no way coming back, unless they try to. This is sci-fi.
They left a little bit of ambiguity there for that reason.
Because like anything with sci-fi, they'll create some loophole, where they can do it if they want to. But so we'll see. I'm with you. I'm thinking like, yeah, chances are it's done, but you never know. With what worked though, I felt like it was the second half mostly. I thought that the show really struggled early on, and it's important to have those melodramatic things in a show like this but this show is not about that specifically. It's about the balance of that and the story. I think those things will make you care about characters, but if that's your only focus, like you're like, okay, where's this going? Like, why am I watching this? Because like an example I use is the show Twin Peaks. Like Twin Peaks, they solve the crime of the show, and then for like 6 to 7 episodes, it turns into a soap opera. And you're just like, this isn't Twin Peaks, like this is something else. And that's kind of how it felt early on. Like it felt like a different show, like they changed gears.
Yeah.
Because they didn't like open up and you're like, okay, here's the story, here's what we're going for. Which was kind of frustrating because how season 2 ended in a way to where we could just automatically transition to that. And I thought one thing that was interesting that they didn't stick the landing on it, but I thought it was at least different. Was the fact that the characters were never fully together until the end. The fact that they were all in their own little sections, which they did that a little bit in previous seasons, but they did it pretty much exclusively like this whole season. And so I thought there was times where I felt like the show would have been better if they were together, because you would have that back and forth. But I'm going to give them at least a little bit of credit for trying something different, because if you do get to a point where you run out of ideas. And so I give them a little bit of credit. On that point, my last point of what worked for me was the character of Robin, played by Maya Hawke. I thought that she was the best actor on the show this season. I thought she had amazing screen presence, and it was funny. I was watching it, and I was like, yeah, she's pretty good. At first I was kind of like whatever on her character. I'm like, yeah, it's a little side character, whatever. And then as it went along, especially in the scene where she's in the stall and she's talking, and I was like really taken back by her, and I was like, yeah, okay, I like this character a lot. And then I was just like, she's just like got a presence about her that she's charismatic, she's gorgeous, and I was just like, she is really special. And I looked her up, and I was like, that's why. She is the daughter of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman.
Oh, well.
So that's why she's both charismatic and gorgeous.
That's fair. That makes sense.
And I was just like, yeah, because I was like, God, she looks familiar. Like, why does she look familiar? And she's about to hit it big because she was in this. She's gonna be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then she's got one other big movie that she's either done already or is going to do. So she's about to hit a streak.
And I will agree with you. That scene between her and Steve Harrington
Yes.
in the bathroom stall is wonderful. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
Well done, well shot. Everything about it was good. That definitely did work. But I think what killed me the most on this season, if I may, Netflix has a history of doing this. They take really, really big risks on new shows. Orange is the New Black is very cutting edge, very different. House of Cards, not really different in concept, but different in feel. It was a lot darker, a lot more ominous.
Yeah.
And as soon as they establish that this works and it's working well, they never change. That is what you will get, and it goes stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
Stranger Things is starting to fall into that trope, but they've kind of gone overboard with it, where I'm pretty sure a good hour of the 8 hours of Stranger Things I just watched were just clips from old seasons. There was a constant throwback to an old season, a clip showing Elle closing the gate, constant throwbacks, and like even within the season itself, Will, played by Noah Schnapp, I believe was like one of the greatest characters last season. He really flexed his chops as an actor. It was a great performance. The only thing he contributed this season was touching the back of his neck, which became ridiculous and overdone and just drawn out.
Yeah, and that was one of the refreshing things about season 2, which, and I think season 2 kind of suffered from it a little bit too. Season 2 kind of got off to a slow start as well, but season 2 was a fresh step because season 1 it was because he was taken to the Upside Down, but like you kind of forgot about it all. Because they're looking from the entire thing, but he doesn't have a lot of screen time, so it's like he's kind of just like not as important in viewers' eyes. And in season 2, they're like, okay, he was not in the previous season really, so now he's going to be a central focus,
Yeah.
and so he was done great. But then it was kind of back to square one for him in this season, and you're just like, okay.
Well, that's another thing they seem to just kind of get away from completely. They establish that it works, and then they just kind of sloughed it off, is the idea of the Upside Down. We never even really got a good grasping scene from the Upside Down,
No.
a couple brief little glints, but this seemed to be a more realistic sci-fi as opposed to the strange, bizarre sci-fi that you came to expect from Stranger Things.
Yeah, and I think part of that was my previous issue was that it was more about the urgency wasn't there because it wasn't about they're in a situation and they need to improve it. It was about they see where the situation's going and they're trying to stop it before it happens.
Yeah.
And so that you don't get the Upside Down because it's like that. And that's I don't know. It was one of those things where it's like as a writer I'm looking at it and I'm thinking I don't know how you improve that, but I'm going to call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't working for me. And like I said, they found their ground eventually to where they saved the season, but it's worth noting that, and I think the death of Hopper, it was one of those things that it sucked, but
It had to happen.
It had to happen, and I think he is the sacrificial character. I mean, I think there's a lot of qualities in him that is that way because of his origin and like his past and stuff like that, and that was the thing that kind of got spoiled for me was that the night before the premiere, David Harbour shared a photo that was of a Neverending Story, and then he posted a bunch of stuff about how important the season was to him and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, either him or 11 is dying.
Yeah, that's right.
I was like, because it's either going to be him or the character he cares about the most.
And so it feels like from a writer's room standpoint with this, they had a lot of things that were working great for him. It was a very strange, bizarre sci-fi show, but it had a lot of good 80s feel to it.
Yeah.
I feel like there was one jackass in the corner of the room who just sat back like, so we need to incorporate some more 80s things in
Yeah.
this. And he's like, you know what, Russians. Like, we're not doing that, Jim. We're not putting Russians in Stranger Things. Like, no, absolutely, we should do Russians.
Yeah.
And somehow it just progressed forward with that's what we're doing. It's a more realistic approach. It's not crazy sci-fi, but therefore, because of that, it is less realistic to us. Why wouldn't we just call in the military at this point, or do something? Doesn't Hopper have some kind of connections of cheese please that we could address a Russian invasion?
Well, yeah, and then at the end of the season, they came after everything was
Oh, they still
solved.
showed up.
And I was, by the time they did, I forgot that was even a subplot. Like, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. They did call the government like 3 episodes ago or whatever it was.
And the worst part is our bit of flavor towards the end of of this season, towards next season, is we're going to continue with the Russian plot. That's what we're doing. We're rolling with it. So that's disappointing to say the least. But overall, not a terrible season. I mean, I'll accept it. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it was definitely not the Stranger Things that we had been given 2 years prior.
No, it definitely wasn't. And they were still. One thing I will say that I do enjoy about these seasons, and this isn't a nostalgia thing. It's more of like a filmmaking history thing. Is every season has a very prominent movie they're pulling from.
Okay.
I think with season 1, I mean you were definitely dealing with a lot of the Stephen King children's stuff. You were dealing with Stand By Me, and
Okay.
then obviously you had a little bit of Goonies in there and stuff like that. In season 2, there was a lot of the Steven Spielberg kind of early sci-fi, such as E.T., Close Encounters, stuff like that. And then this one, obviously, we had the Russian stuff, and Neverending Story.
Which honestly, the Neverending Story bit was hilarious.
Oh my god! Yeah, the fact that girl just showed up out of nowhere,
Yeah.
I was just
Susie. And like I'm okay with that because we kept talking about Susie, we kept bringing up. So like obviously we knew Susie was going to show up at the end.
Yeah.
But the whole never-ending story song was wonderful, and I think that's a good part of Stranger Things. It does have this wonderful moments of humor. Season 2, where Elle for some reason just decides to say "bitchin'," was a huge moment.
Oh,
And this we get "I dump your ass," which is still
Yes.
great.
the other moment, that's what I was going to bring up. This season was Terminator, because
Yeah.
the entire thing with Billy was so Terminator. Like and the big Russian dude. Like I'm watching this, I'm just like, that's Schwarzenegger. They even mentioned
yeah.
that he looks like Schwarzenegger, and I was just like, they're going with Terminator here, and it was cool like at parts, but then there was other parts I'm like, all right, you're going like really heavy on this, you know.
But no, I'm going to call it right now. We are progressing forward. These kids are getting older. The
Yeah.
80s are coming to an end.
Yeah.
They are going to end this show next season. And mainly because Elle got too close to Joyce. Don't do that. That'll
I
kill
think
you.
if they're smart about it, they will, because I think the story-wise it should.
Maybe we could take the budget from Stranger Things and revive Disjointed, because that would make me a very happy man. That's all I want in life.
Jesus.
Anyway, what else do you want to say about Stranger Things? Anything else you want to?
No, I mean
touch on here?
I mean I think we really hit the nail on the head. Like, it's not a bad season. I think they had a lot of stuff going forward. I think that it's on its last legs. I think that it could continue, but I think you're really gonna just have subpar.
For once, I just want Netflix to find balance where they don't end it too early, but don't drag it on to beating a dead horse.
Yeah.
It's time to end it. It's time to give it a good
Because
conclusion.
that was the issue with Orange is the New Black for me. Like,
Yeah.
they ran it on to where it's just like I just didn't care anymore. The urgency of the story wasn't there anymore.
Yes.
And so I think they're at a point now where it's still important enough, and the show's so hot right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, just go Breaking Bad. Like, just tell the story you want to tell and finish it. Don't go to where like you're just don't go Game of Thrones. You know?
I agree.
So
And bring back Disjointed.
Oh, well, we'll disagree on that. But okay, so that was our. Oh, wait a minute. No, before we do that, ratings.
What would you rate this here?
So I'm gonna give two parts to my rating. The first, the actual number. I give it about a 7.5. I think it was good, not great. And as far as ranking them, I thought it was the least best.
Yeah.
I thought that season 1 is still the best. Season 2 started off slow start, but was still better than this season.
Okay. I'd say pretty close to it. I'd give it a 7 out of 10 for sure. Enjoyable watch, nothing wrong with it by any means, but it's not capitalizing where Stranger Things came from. It's been a steady downhill slope ever since. In ranking order, absolutely, this was the weakest season of the 3 we've had.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So okay, so if you agree with our takes, comment below. If you disagree, fight us, and we will fight back. And also be sure to subscribe, share, like, do anything you want with this video, and hopefully we'll catch you in future videos.
Bring back Disjointed.